Civic Type R is the hot hatch. Its big wing and red badges are synonymous with zippy, rippy, front-wheel drive performance. And every time you see or hear one, it's hard not to smile. But for years, Americans never got the car. Now, we're making up for lost time. This is the 2023 Honda Civic Type R, and I'm Alanis King. Let's go for a drive and stick around for the end of this video to get this Type R's full report card and see how it compares to the new Toyota GR Corolla. Before we get to this Type R, did you notice my matching red shirt? It's from Home Field Apparel and they are fantastic. They support this channel so much and they make the coolest stuff. Home Field has all kinds of officially licensed collegiate and now motorsports apparel. This Tim Richmond shirt is from their recent Hendrick Motorsports line and the whole line is awesome. If you want to check out Home Field, you can use my code ALANIS24 for 15% off your order. The modern Honda Civic lineup has three main levels: the normal car, the SI, and the Type R. Honda's sold about 30 million Civics globally since the car debuted, and most people buy the normal one. The SI is the sport light version of the Civic, and the Type R is the most hardcore, and both of them only come with a manual transmission. For a long time, America didn't get a Civic Type R. And while we usually associate the Type R with Civics these days, the first one was actually the 1992 Honda NSX, which was designed to be a race car for the road. Honda painted it championship white with red badges, gave it a 276 horsepower V6, and offered it to the Japanese market. A few years later came the Japanese market Honda Integra Type R in 1995, which had a four-cylinder engine and made 197 horsepower. And in 1997 came our beloved Civic Type R. That early Civic Type R was an adorable little Japanese market hatchback with a red interior, and its four-cylinder engine made 183 horsepower at 8,200 RPM. Over the years, Honda's made Type R Integras, Civics, and even Accords, and there's been a Civic Type R on the market most years since it debuted in 1997. But the Civic Type R stayed on the Japanese and European markets, never quite making it to America. In 2017, America finally got its Civic Type R during the 10th generation of the Civic. And to our surprise, it looked like a battle bot. That car stayed on the market from 2017 to 2021 before the new Type R arrived. The last Type R made 306 horsepower, and this one makes 315 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque from a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. All of that goes through a 6-speed manual transmission, which is the only transmission option available on this vehicle to the front wheels. With hot hatches like the Type R, you're typically going to have either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. And front-wheel drive comes with its own difficulties. You have the tendency for the car to experience torque steer, which is when the wheel pulls to the side under hard acceleration. And also, because we're only going to the front two wheels, the car can experience some difficulty putting the power down. On the last generation of the Type R, I did have that. In first gear, the wheels would skip and hop a bit. And I was like, maybe it's just me. But I talked to the owner of the car and they said they experienced that too. The good news is when you dropped it into second gear, it put the power down so well. I don't know if that's gonna happen on this car, but we will see today. It was around 2015 when we learned the United States would finally get Honda's Halo Civic hot hatch. And news stories said the car would come with at least 275 horsepower, a 6-speed manual, and a reputation that included the Nürburgring track record. for fastest front-wheel drive production car. Leading up to the Type R's arrival, there were a few main headlines. One was, "Yay, the Type R is coming to America!" Another was, "Why does it have 3 exhaust tips? Isn't that a little unnecessary for a 4-cylinder car?" This car has 2 small outer exhaust tips and 1 big center one, while the last Type R had 2 big outer exhaust tips and a small center one. And Road & Track reported in 2017 that this was not just for appearances, it was also for optimized sound. So with the last Civic Type R, Honda told Road & Track the goal was to have sporty around town sound, but also not carry that sound onto the highway. Because with a lot of sports cars with performance exhausts, you get on the highway and it just drones in your ear, and that gets old after about 5 minutes. So with the old Type R, that central exhaust had a resonator in it. So when you're under hard acceleration and you're driving around town, that resonator sounded really, really good. And then when you get up to cruising speeds on the highway, more of the airflow went to the outer exhaust tips with mufflers, quieting the car down and not annoying your brain the whole trip down the highway. A lot of people make fun of Civics as enthusiast cars. They associate them with adolescent boys who like fart can exhausts or can't really afford anything else. But the Civic lineup is incredible when it comes to affordable and good quality commuter cars and hot hatches. The cheapest Civic you can currently buy in America starts at less than $24,000, which is impressive these days because the average price of a new car in the United States is about $50,000. The Civic Si, which is a wonderful little 200 horsepower car, starts at $29,000, and the Type R jumps up to about $45,000. People were shocked at the price of the new Type R when it came out, especially because the last generation had a $38,000 base MSRP for its final year. It was a big jump, and that doesn't even take into account the dealer markups. As I'm speaking right now, there are some dealers who want $20,000 over MSRP on AutoTrader. That means they're trying to sell $66,000 Civic Type Rs. We just can't have nice things, can we? This Type R, if it were to sell for MSRP, would cost you $44,385. It's a 2023 model, so its base MSRP is $42,895. The only option on this car is its $395 Championship White paint, which you might recognize from that original NSX Type R, plus the typical $1,100 destination and handling fee. Some of the standard features on this car include a limited slip differential, multi-link rear suspension, active damper system, Brembo front brake calipers, 19-inch wheels, a bright red interior, an aluminum shift knob, and more. Championship White is a very time-honored Honda color, and if you're just watching this video in isolation, you might go, "Isn't that just white?" And the answer is no. When you put this car next to a normal white vehicle, you can see just how creamy it looks. My entire neighborhood is white vehicles, and when you walk or drive down the road, this car looks almost tan next to them. But since I don't have a white vehicle to just pull out of my pocket, I brought a bag of props. And my first one is this Ford GT diecast. This Ford GT diecast is not stark white. It's a little bit off-white, but not nearly as off-white as the Type R. You can really see the difference between these two. But you're gonna see an even bigger difference when I pull out a piece of printer paper. Bright white right here, okay? We put it up against the Type R, and you can really see the difference between these two and just how off-white this car is. Now, I think this car is more like the color of book paper. So to illustrate that, I got this wonderful book about Formula One written by me. We pop it open to a wonderful page, and we put it next to this paint, and you can see they're almost the exact same color. So if you like books, you'll probably like this paint. The last generation Civic Type R was a lot. Its looks were a source of huge debate. Some people were like, this is so silly and juvenile and way too young for me, and if I touch it, I could get a paper cut. And other people, like me, loved it because that Type R leaned into what it is. It is a silly little hot hatch, and it wasn't afraid to be one. And when this Type R came out, I was a little disappointed. I thought it was kind of chickeny. It reverted back to a more palatable, normal car, and it just didn't feel as confident in itself as the last car did. But over time, this car has really grown on me, and I think that's because, one, it looks great and it looks extremely mature and refined. But two, after so many years of not having a Honda Civic Type R on the American market, we now have two extremely different ones to choose from. You can go with the young, silly, juvenile Type R, or this more refined, mature one, and you don't have to wait 25 years to import either of them, so long as you're okay with a few dealer markups. An American Type R also means we get to do my favorite activity. How many Atlantises can fit in this Honda Civic Type R's trunk? We take our phone out, we slide on in, and oh my goodness, this is spacious. This is gonna be so easy, and it has handles on the inside. It was made for me. Wow. Oh, definitely a solid 1.5 if Atlantis is flexible. This trunk has space. Welcome inside the Honda Civic Type R, where the first thing you notice about this vehicle is that it looks like a Type R. You don't even have to know what a Type R is to think this looks like a Type R. Everything is red. It matches the red Type R logos. We have the red Honda badge on the steering wheel. It looks fantastic in here. These seats are just absolutely, they feel so nice. They're so sporty. We have the embossed Type R logo on the headrest. So I have thoughts about the bolsters, both positive and negative. On the positive side, these bolsters are so hard and stiff and just well constructed that I think over time they won't break down like you see with a lot of really high up bolsters. Over time, as you're getting in and out of the car, you get creases in the bolsters, they start to break down. These are so stiff that I think they will last a long time. The negative side of these bolsters is that if you have a body type like me, you have bigger hips and you have bigger thighs, they're a little uncomfortable to drive in because they're meant to squeeze a more square body. They're not that bad. You get used to them over time, but when you first get in and you're trying to adjust to the feeling of the car, your hips do feel a little squeezed. This interior overall is absolutely beautiful. You look around and it's either suede or carpet or this nice dull black material, right? It just looks really pleasing to the eye in here. We have red contrast stitching, red badges, red accents. It's so nice. But when you start to tap on things, it does sound a little plasticky. Now, if you're not going around tapping on things, you're not gonna notice, but if you do, you are. A very big positive about this interior is that there is zero piano black. The last gen Type R had the tiniest bit of piano black, and this Type R completely does away with it. There is none of it, and that is absolutely beautiful. Now, one thing that is a little weird about this car is your air vents have these little knobs that kind of look like tassels sticking out. They're an acquired taste. You know, I've gotten used to them. I can see they're creative, but when you first look at them, they're a little weird to behold. We also have an electronic parking brake in here, and that to me is a little weird because the Type R is the hot hatch. This is the car car when you think about hot hatches. And when you think about hot hatches, you think about yanking up a handbrake to do a handbrake turn. Electronic parking brake is just not that fun, and I would have gone with a manual handbrake on the inside of this car. Another potential downside of this car is that our shift knob is aluminum, and it's beautiful, right? It's so silver and pretty, and you have the numbers engraved in it in red. But a very common complaint about older versions of this car, and likely this car too, is that in the summers, this shift knob gets really, really hot, and in the winters, it gets really, really cold. It is spring and a very mild temperature right now. It's about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, so I can't really test that. But as I'm holding this shifter right now, it is a little chilly. So if it got really cold in here, this shifter would be freezing. If it got really hot, this shifter would be hot. Maybe you could give it like a little mitten, put a mitten on top of it so you don't have to touch the aluminum, but hey, it looks good. In the back seat of the Type R, we have some positives and some negatives, but this is unmistakably a Type R. And you can tell because we have Type R logos up front. We have the bright red seats. We have bright red carpets below my feet, which are just, oh, absolutely lovely. And the backs of these front seats have Type R engraved in them. So when I'm sitting in this back seat, right in my vision, it says Type R, Type R, Type R. This is a Type R. Now, our front seats in the Type R are bright red. Our back seats, you'll notice, are black. And you might go, why are the back seats black? That is so bizarre. But I have a counterpoint to that. If you have a family and you have children in the back seat, maybe you get them a drink from a fast food restaurant and they spill it all over the seats. These are black, so it won't be nearly as much of a headache as these red front seats. Now, the carpet, that's a different story because that's red. But these seats, they're gonna take a little beating better than the front seats would. Now, my negative about these black back seats is a negative I have about a lot of Civic back seats. The last gen Type R, the last gen SI, this Type R. These seats are very, very weak. It's like if you have a memory foam pillow that you sleep on, how it just kind of presses down with your head, right? That's what these seats do. So if you have kids back here or you have people riding in the back a lot, I do worry that these seats could break down more quickly than other seats. Just like we have those really nice strong bolsters up front that aren't gonna break down, I worry that these will. But automakers do tons of stress testing on their material. So maybe these back seats have been stress tested to the moon and back and they survive. I don't know. I can't tell you that. But I can tell you, they worry me a little bit. Welcome inside the Honda Civic Type R, where before you even start driving, you notice 3 things about this driving experience. The first is that these pedals, all 3 of them, are oriented a bit to the right. And maybe it's subjective, maybe it's just the way I'm seated, but when I feel these pedals, I actually expect the clutch to be a little more left set than it is. I feel like the whole pedal box is just oriented a little bit this way. The second thing that you notice about this car is that the box, the shifter, is actually really close together. All of the gears are very tight. You have first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. They're all really, really near each other, and neutral is not in the center, direct center. Neutral is actually a little to the left toward the driver and a little up. So I've actually been in this Type R before on the racetrack and we were waiting to go. And this car was in first, but I thought it was in neutral. So I took my foot off the clutch because we were waiting and the car died. And it was so quiet that I didn't know that it died because I thought it was in neutral. That's just how oddly set the neutral is in this car. The last thing you notice about this car is that the movement from reverse to first is so smooth. So when you're backing out of a parking spot, you're in reverse, right? When you're ready to pop it up into first, it just slides right into first. Oh my goodness. The acceleration in this car feels a little smoother than it did in the last Type R. And although this car feels really, really nice and refined and also just like you could go on a road trip in it. The driving experience is smooth. I also still look out of the front window and I feel like I'm kind of in a video game. Like, it's just very rally style, my experience. The sides of the road are just shooting by me and the car sounds so loud because obviously I'm still accelerating. I'm not settling in for highway cruising. And it's just, oh my goodness, it's so planted in every corner. And I think that's something I really was surprised at with this car when I sped up, because I felt like when I was driving this car on the street the first time I drove it, when I was driving normal commute, I was like, it doesn't feel as sporty as I expected. But then as you get up to speed and you put it in plus R mode and you go on the racetrack and you do your thing, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is just fine. Popping in plus R mode right now. So plus R mode does a few things. It stiffens up the car, so when I go over bumps, it's gonna go, right? It makes the steering feel more visceral. And it also makes the car more responsive in general. So when I hit the gas pedal, like right there, it's ready, it's hopping. That's what we do in plus R mode. The acceleration in this car feels really smooth, and it was really smooth in the last Type R. The only time I experienced issues with the acceleration in the last Type R was in first gear, flooring it. You experienced a lot of wheel hopping, struggling to put the power down, but every other gear, the acceleration is very smooth. The car sounds so good, also without sounding augmented. Sometimes you get in a sports car and sports cars have augmented cabin noise and augmented engine noise. This car just feels very rawly good. It sounds very rawly good, which is nice. It's refreshing to not feel like the sound is just super augmented in a car. This Type R and the last Type R are very smooth and refined, especially outside of first gear. They're very good at putting the power down. You feel like you're in control, but you also have just that little bit of wiggle and that little bit of uncertainty, and also just the visceral nature of this car to remind you, hey, you're in a hot hatch. Have some fun with it, but also be careful. Now, the one thing about this car that I have mixed feelings about is the shifter feel. And if you've driven a Type R or you drive a Type R regularly, I'm sure you're like, oh, Lannis, how dare you say you're not sure about the shifter feel in the Type R? That shifter is buttery smooth. It's amazing. What's wrong with you? And I agree, in isolation. But I have spent the last couple of weeks driving cars with very notchy shifters. When you drive it back to back with a notchy shifter, it does almost feel like a toy. And if I drove this car by itself, if this were my daily driver, if I bought it and I drove it every single day, I would drive it in isolation and it would feel buttery smooth and I would love every single second of it. The one thing I will say that is objectively a little iffy about the smooth and buttery shifter is that there's actually quite a bit of play when the car is in gear. So I just popped it into third gear and I can wiggle it back and forth in third gear as I'm about to go into a turn. I can wiggle this shifter back and forth in third gear. And as a car gets older and you go through these shifter gates and you just do your thing every day of your life, those gates will get looser just as a result of time. That's what happens. But driving experience-wise, this car is just, oh, so nice. You turn that wheel and it just, wow, it feels so responsive. The acceleration is great. And then every once in a while you get that little bit of front wheel drive play and you go over a giant bump and you literally get air. Like my butt is coming off of the seat on a bump, and that's because it's in Plus R mode. If it were in comfort mode, it would probably be fine. But we are on the stiff suspension setting. And so we're hopping a little bit, you know? That's what you get when you have a stiff suspension. I absolutely love the Honda Civic Type R. I love the last generation. I love this generation. I love that if we were gonna get 2 Honda Civic Type Rs, and hopefully more, who knows, but if we were gonna get at least 2 Honda Civic Type Rs in the United States, I am so glad we got the silly adolescently styled one and the really, really mature take to work kind of Type R, because you get to pick which one suits you the best, and that is an incredible choice to have. Now it's time to break this Honda Civic Type R down. Welcome to Alanis's report card. We're gonna start with the exterior, which I give a B. This car looks wonderful and mature and refined, but a part of me, and a big part of me, misses the really juvenile, silly nature of the last Type R. The interior gets an A, but just barely, because this interior looks wonderful, it's beautiful, but then you start tapping on some of the more plastic materials and you go, that's not as nice of a quality as I would have liked. The performance on this car is an A, whether you're driving on the road or the racetrack. It's just a really enjoyable car to be in. But I do wish I could try it with a notchier shifter just to see how I felt. The value on this car is a B. Overall, $45,000 is not that big of an ask for a hot hatch. This is a very niche market car and it's super refined. But with dealer markups, you will have a lot of trouble getting this car for $45,000. Would I take this car on a road trip? Yes, I would. But the one thing that would give me a little bit of pause would be the seat bolsters. They're very high and they're very harsh, and they're not super fitting to someone like me who has bigger hips and bigger thighs. But overall, after like 15 to 20 minutes, I would get used to it. And our overall report card for this car is a B+. Feelings alone, I would love to give the Type R an A, but there are some things that hold it back from that letter grade for me. The one thing people cannot stop asking me is how the new Honda Civic Type R compares to the brand new Toyota GR Corolla. I drove that car recently and we will link the full review on the screen for you. I don't blame people for asking this. I would be asking the same thing. But the answer is that there's not a clear answer. These cars have 2 very different personalities, both of which are incredible. The Type R, which has been around a lot longer, is more mature, whereas the GR Corolla, which is brand new, is a lot feistier and more fiery right out of the gate. Exterior-wise, it's a toss-up. Both of these cars look good. On the interior, the Type R is the clear winner. The Corolla interior is missing a lot of comfort and appearance features, but it also has a much cheaper base MSRP at $36,000. If you're going to commute long distances in the car, the Type R is probably for you. It has a level of comfort the Corolla doesn't. And driving-wise, I love both, but my soul says the Corolla. Its acceleration is so raw and bitey, yet in the corners it's composed. Plus, I can't help that I like the adolescence of it. The only complaint you can have is that the Corolla's clutch is long and bites first gear at the end of your release motion, while the Civic's clutch is light and has a smoother catch over the course of the full release. Perhaps the most poetic way to illustrate the Type R versus the GR Corolla is to compare them to a music artist over time. The GR Corolla is the edgy teenage pop star, a straight rally ripper in its early days of being a hot hatch. While the Type R has been around for a long time, it's gotten to experience a lot of identities. So now it's more serious and refined. It's grown up, giving it a bigger, more mature range. Whether you lean adolescent or adult is totally your call, and you can't go wrong either way. All I hope is that both of these cars have long careers and lots of world tours ahead of them.